For over 3 years, Scottie Scheffler has been the most dominant force in professional golf. He has won 14 tournaments in 2 seasons. He has held the #1 ranking for over 100 weeks. He broke Tiger Woods' record for the longest cut streak in the modern era. He looked unbeatable. But then, the game changed. The wins stopped coming. The putts stopped falling. And for the first time in nearly 4 years, Scottie Scheffler was sent home early, left to watch the weekend from his couch. Now, after months of silence and a stunning crash back to earth, the world's best player is finally speaking out. What he said about his future, his family, and whether he still cares about winning has shocked the golf world. This is the story of Scottie Scheffler's fall and the secret to his comeback. The sign was the first clue that something was wrong. In the world of professional golf, making the cut is the bare minimum for a player of Scottie Scheffler's caliber. It is the baseline expectation. For the world #1, it was not just a standard, it was a streak, a testament to an unyielding consistency that hadn't faltered since the summer of 2022. 1,428 days, 78 consecutive tournaments. The longest active run on the PGA Tour, an Ironman achievement that even Tiger Woods in his prime had failed to match. When Scottie Scheffler stepped onto the Renaissance Club in Scotland for the Genesis Scottish Open, nobody, not even his most ardent critics, expected what happened. Scheffler's first round was a cautious affair, a 2-under par 68 that seemed to place him comfortably on the right side of the cut line. But golf is a game of fine margins, and on Friday, those margins turned against him. He could only manage a 2 over par 72, a score that, when combined with his opening round, left him hovering at even par. As the afternoon wore on, the projected cut line shifted. It settled at 2 under par. Scheffler was on the outside looking in. The tension reached a peak at the par 3 ninth hole. Needing a birdie to scrape through, his putt lipped out, and a bogey sealed his fate. When the final score was posted, the unthinkable had happened. Scottie Scheffler had missed the cut. His remarkable streak, the one that had defined his era of dominance, was over. The golf world reacted with a mixture of shock and confusion. How could the most consistent player on the planet suddenly fall short of such a basic benchmark? Scheffler himself seemed almost numb when he spoke to the Golf Channel after his round. The 8th hole, I hit the fairway, and I'm in a divot, and then the 9th hole, felt pretty solid, just dies. Overall, just not quite good enough, he said, his voice carrying a tone of quiet disappointment. He admitted to feeling frustrated, drawing a parallel to a similar experience the year before. But while the streak had ended, Scheffler remained characteristically philosophical. He saw the silver lining in the disaster. It's funny. Last year, I feel like I got really frustrated on this golf course playing some good golf and just not really able to get anything going as well. Then I went and played well at the Open Championship, he reflected. It was a subtle hint that the story was not over, a foreshadowing of the resilience that was about to define his year. The narrative was set. The king had been dethroned, but the king was not finished. The question on everyone's mind was not just how he would respond, but if he even cared enough to respond at all. To understand the shock of that missed cut, you have to understand the machine that Scottie Scheffler had become. For 2 straight seasons, he had done what no one since Tiger Woods had managed. He made winning look inevitable. 14 victories in a 24-month span. 2 major championships in 2025 alone. A scoring average that hovered around 68, a full stroke better than anyone else on the planet. He was not just the #1 player in the world. He was the #1 player by a margin that defied logic. Statistically, his 2025 season was the 7th best in the last 40 years of professional golf. Only Tiger Woods had ever posted better numbers. But 2026 was different from the very first tournament. Scheffler won the American Express in January, his 20th career victory. It felt like business as usual. But then the wins stopped. The majors came and went. A runner-up finish at the Masters, a 4th-place tie at the U.S. Open, and then the crushing disappointment of the Open Championship. He had not lifted a major trophy since 2025. For the first time in 3 years, the major season ended without Scheffler holding a piece of silverware. The numbers told a confusing story. His ball striking remained elite. His scoring average was still the best on the PGA Tour at 68.9. His total strokes gained was still ranked first. By any rational measure, he was still the best player in the world. But the victories that had once come in a flood had become a trickle. 5 runner-up finishes, 2 playoff losses, a season defined not by triumph, but by the cruelest of margins. Then came the question that everyone was too afraid to ask. Did he still care? This was not a question of effort. It was a question of priority. Earlier in the year, Scheffler had made a statement that sent ripples through the golf media. When asked about the importance of making history, he had said, "That just isn't that important to me." He spoke openly about his faith and his family, making it clear that golf, for all its glory, was not the center of his universe. He said if his game ever started to affect his home life, that would be the last day he played for a living. It was a refreshingly honest take for a professional athlete at the peak of his powers. But to some, it sounded like a man who had lost his edge. How could the world's best golfer be content with second place? How could he not be consumed by the desire to chase Jack Nicklaus and Tiger Woods? The media began to speculate. Was fatherhood draining his competitive fire? Had the birth of his second son, Remy, in March 2026, shifted his focus in a way that made winning less of a priority? His caddy, Ted Scott, quickly dismissed any suggestion that Scheffler had lost his killer instinct. If Scheffler was playing a 9-year-old girl in ping pong, he would want to beat her 21-0. Scott said, the fire was still there, but something had changed. The missed cut at the Scottish Open was not just a statistical anomaly. It was a symptom. It was the moment when the machinery of his incredible consistency finally ground to a halt. And as Scheffler packed his bags and flew to Southport, England, to prepare for his Open title defense, he carried the weight of a season that had been defined by almost. The question was no longer whether he could win. It was whether he even knew who he was anymore without winning. The missed cut at the Scottish Open was not the end of the story. It was, in many ways, the beginning. Because the moment Scottie Scheffler packed his bags and headed south to Royal Birkdale, something shifted. The defending champion arrived at the Open not as the dominant force of years past, but as a man with something to prove to himself. And in those first few days on the English coast, he showed the world why he is still the best player on the planet. The response was immediate. On Thursday morning at Royal Birkdale, Scheffler shot a 2-under par 68, hitting 13 of 14 fairways, and putting himself right back in contention. It was a statement round, the kind of performance that reminded everyone why he had won this tournament the year before. After the round, he spoke with a quiet confidence that had been missing for months. If I continue to strike the ball the way I did today and just keep giving myself looks, that's part of it, Scheffler said. Golf is played over 72 holes, and I definitely liked what I saw today. But it was what he said before the tournament even started that revealed the real turning point. In the days leading up to his title defense, Scheffler opened up about something he had been wrestling with all season. The question of why he plays the game at all. Why am I doing this? He mused to reporters. Why do I want to win this tournament so badly? Why do I choose to play this sport for a living? When I have a really good understanding of what my why is when I'm playing, I think that's when I'm at peace the most. This was not the scripted response of a robotic athlete. This was a man searching for meaning in the midst of struggle. He acknowledged the frustration that had been building all year. I get really into, the heat of the moment, and I think that's sometimes why you'll see me get frustrated, he admitted. It would almost be easier if I didn't want to win this badly. If losing didn't hurt so much, it might be easier to come out and play. But then again, when I retire and I sit back, I'm going to miss the feeling of waking up in the morning and not being able to eat breakfast because your stomach hurts because you're anticipating the day. Here was the raw honesty that had always made Scheffler different. He cared deeply. He wanted it desperately. And that desire, far from being a weakness, was the very thing that kept him fighting. He also pushed back against the narrative that his priorities had changed. When asked about legacy and history, he was characteristically blunt. I don't really play for a place in history, he said. I have never once thought about how I'm going to be remembered. To me, it truly doesn't matter from a sense of accomplishment. Like when I die, hey, Scottie won 4 majors and 20 tournaments and he won this much money. That has zero effect on me. History to me isn't that important. I don't necessarily want to be remembered for winning the tournaments that I won. I'd much rather be remembered for the way that I did it. Doing things the right way, treating people the right way. It was a profound statement from the best player in the world, a reminder that for Scheffler, the journey always mattered more than the destination. Then came the moment that truly defined his week. His caddy, Ted Scott, had prepared a long text message after the missed cut at the Scottish Open, outlining all the options for how to spend the extra time before the Open. But Scott never sent it. When Scheffler found out, he laughed. He was like, "Hey, you can practice at the facilities. You can still go to the gym. You can also go to the next tournament," Scheffler recalled. "It was basically all my options. He never sent it to me, but he told me about it. I was like, oh, you should have sent it." I was a bit lost. The admission of being a bit lost was startling from a man who had built his career on precision and control. But it was also the turning point. In acknowledging his confusion, he had found his clarity. The stage was set for redemption. Royal Birkdale, the historic English links where Jordan Spieth had produced one of the greatest comebacks in Open history in 2017, was now the backdrop for Scottie Scheffler's own dramatic narrative. The missed cut was behind him. The questions about his hunger were answered. Now came the hard part, actually winning. Thursday's opening round was a microcosm of Scheffler's entire season. He started red hot, birdieing 4 of his first 6 holes to take the solo lead. A 43-foot putt on the 6th had the crowd roaring and the golf world believing the old Scottie was back. He was striking the ball with surgical precision, hitting 13 of 14 fairways, the best in the entire field. Every metric said he was playing the best golf of anyone in the tournament. And then, just as quickly as it had arrived, the magic vanished. On the par 3 7th, a wedge shot went wrong. He bogeyed. Then came the par 5 17th, where a wayward approach buried itself in thick fescue, so deep that Scheffler considered taking an unplayable. He managed to hack it out, but the damage was done. Another bogey. On the 18th, a putt that looked destined for a closing birdie rolled to within an inch of the hole and stopped. He signed for a 2-under par 68, a score that felt like the worst he could have possibly shot given how well he had played. After the round, he was philosophical but frustrated. "I felt like I could have gotten a little bit more out of it," he admitted. "I played the par 5s and over par. Those are a little disappointing." But the real drama was still to come. Sunday arrived with Scheffler trailing by 6 shots, needing a miracle to defend his claret jug. He nearly delivered. For the first 9 holes, he was flawless. Birdie after birdie dropped. By the time he holed a 14-foot putt at the par 3 12th, he had reached 8 under par and was right back in the thick of the hunt. The leaders had barely teed off. The impossible was suddenly possible. Then came the 13th. A missed fairway. A second shot that advanced barely a yard, stuck up on a hill. Bogey. The momentum stalled. On the 15th, a poor chip led to another bogey. He was slipping away again. But Scheffler refused to quit. He birdied the 16th, pulling himself back to 8 under. And then came the 17th hole, the moment that will define this Open for years to come. Scheffler pulled his tee shot left into a horrible lie behind a large mound. He screamed in frustration. Why? Why? How does that even happen? He attacked his second shot with a fairway metal, but it again started left, sailing behind a hospitality structure and disappearing into deep fescue. It looked hopeless. He hit a provisional ball, convinced his championship hopes were over.